He who does not know how to look back at where he came from will never get to his destination.
A famous quote from a patriot, physician, and a man of letters who was an inspiration to the Philippine nationalist movement, Dr. Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonzo Realonda. He was a son of a prosperous landowners. Rizal was educated in Manila, and in the University of Madrid, he became a brilliant medical student. He soon committed himself to the reform of the Spanish rule in his home country. One of his famous books was El Filibusterismo. It is known by its alternative English title, The Reign of Greed. This was the second novel written by him and was a sequel of Noli Me Tangere. It was published in 1891. It continues the Noli's criticism of the abuses and the corruption perpetrated by the Spanish government. The novel was written in dedication of the three martyred priests, namely Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, who was known as Gumborza, whose tragic execution left unforgettable imprint in his mind. It is a political novel, the book of thought, work of the head, and compromise bitterness, hatred, pain, sorrow, and violence. According to him, in order to know the destiny of a nation, it is necessary to open the book of its past. Come and join us as we reminisce the significant events of the past which shaped the Philippines' nationalism.
Part of the summary of El Filibusterismo, which is the second novel written by Dr. Jose Rizal, as well as the sequel to his first novel, Noli Me Tangere. Now, in the prequel, Noli Me Tangere, Crisostomo Ibarra escapes the ranks of the persecuting soldiers. It is revealed in the story that Crisostomo dug up his buried treasure, fled to Cuba, became richer and richer, and became friends with Spanish officials. The story of El Filibusterismo began with steamers sailing from the Pasig River down Manila to Laguna de Bay. 13 years after leaving the Philippines, Crisostomo Ibarra now returns as Simon, who is a rich jeweler, sporting a beard and blue-tinted glasses, and a confidant of the Captain General. Over the 13 years that Crisostomo, now known as Simon, has gone, he had abandoned his idealism and now became a cynical saboteur, seeking revenge against the Spanish Philippine system responsible for his misfortunes by plotting a revolution. Simon insinuates himself into Manila high society and influences every decision of the Captain General to mismanage the country's affairs so that a revolution will break out. He cynically sides with the upper classes and encourages them to commit abuses against the masses, to encourage the masses to revolt against the oppressive Spanish colonial regime. This time, he does not attempt to fight the authorities through legal means, but through violent revolution using the masses. Simon has reasons for instigating a revolution. His first reason is to rescue Maria Clara from the convent, and the second is to get rid of ills and evils from the Philippine society. Simon's true identity is discovered by a now grown-up Basilio while visiting the grave of his mother, Sisa, as Simon was digging near the gravesite for his buried treasures. Simon spares Basilio's life and asks him to join in his planned revolution against the government, egging him on by bringing on the tragic misfortunes of the latter's family. Basilio declines the offer as he still hopes that the country's condition will improve. Basilio, at this point, is a graduating student of the medicine at the Ateneo Municipal de Manila. After the death of his mother, Sisa, and the disappearance of his younger brother, Crispin, Basilio heeded the advice of the dying boatman Elias and traveled to Manila to study. Basilio was then adopted by Captain Tiago after Maria Clara entered the convent. With Captain Tiago's help, Basilio was able to go to Colegio de San Juan de Letran, where at first he is frowned upon by his peers and teachers, not only because of the color of his skin, but also because of his shabby appearance. Captain Tiago's confessor, Father Irene, is making Captain Tiago's health worse by giving him opium, even as Basilio tries hard to prevent Captain Tiago from smoking it. Basilio and the other students want to establish a Spanish language academy so that they can learn to speak and write Spanish despite the opposition from the Dominican friars of the Universidad de Santo Tomas. With the help of reluctant Father Irene as their mediator and Don Custodio's decision, the academy is established. However, they will only serve as caretakers of the school and not as teachers. Dejected and defeated, they hold a mock celebration at the Pansiteria while a spy for the friars witnesses the proceedings. Simon, for his part, keeps in close contact with the bandit group of Cabezang Tales, a former cabeza de barangay who suffered misfortunes at the hands of the friars. Once a farmer owning a prosperous sugarcane plantation and a cabeza de barangay or a barangay head, he was forced to give everything to the greedy and unscrupulous Spanish friars. His son, Tano, who became a civil guard, was captured by bandits. His daughter, Julie, had to work as a maid to get enough ransom money for his freedom, and his father, Tendang Salao, suffered a stroke and became mute. Before joining the bandits, Tales took Simon's revolver while Simon was staying at his house for the night. As payment, Tales leaves a locket that once belonged to Maria Clara. To further strengthen the revolution, Simon has Quiroga, a Chinese man hoping to be appointed consul to the Philippines, smuggle weapons into the country using Quiroga's bazaar as a front. Simon wishes to attack during a stage play with all of his enemies in attendance. He, however, abruptly aborts the attack when he learns from Basilio that Maria Clara had died earlier that day in the convent. A few days after the mock celebration by the students, the people are agitated when disturbing pictures are found displayed around the city. The authorities accuse the students present at the Pansiteria of agitation and disturbing peace and has them arrested. Basilio, although not present at the mock celebration, is also arrested. Captain Tiago dies after learning of the incident, and, as stated in his will, which was forged by Father Irene, all of his possessions are given to the church, leaving nothing for Basilio. Basilio is left in prison as the other students are released. A high official tries to intervene for the release of Basilio, but the Captain General, bearing grudges against the high official, coerces him to tender his resignation. Julie tries to ask Father Camora's help upon the advice of another woman. Instead of helping Julie, however, the priest tries to rape her as he has long hidden desires for Julie. Julie, rather than submit to the will of the friar, jumps over the balcony to her death. Basilio is soon released with the help of Simon. Basilio, now a changed man, and after hearing about Julie's suicide, finally joins Simon's revolution. Simon then tells Basilio his plan at the wedding of Paulita Gomez and Juanito. Basilio's hunchback classmate and the bride is the ex-girlfriend of one of Basilio's friends, Isagani. His plan was to conceal an explosive inside a pomegranate-styled kerosene lamp that Simon will give to the newlyweds as a gift during the wedding reception. The reception will take place at the former home of the late Captain Tiago, which was now filled with explosives planted by Simon.
According to Simon, the lamp will stay lighted for only 20 minutes before it flickers. If someone attempts to turn the wick, it will explode and kill everyone, including important members of civil society and the church hierarchy. Inside the house, Basilio has a change of heart and attempts to warn Isagani, his friend and the former boyfriend of Paulita. When the wedding banquet began, the poet Isagani was rejected for his liberal ideas. He was standing outside the house, sadly looking at the joy inside. His friend Basilio warned him to stay away because the lit lamp would explode very quickly. When Isagani heard the terrible secret of the lamp, he realized that his beloved Paulita was in grave danger. On the other hand, Simon leaves the reception early as planned and leaves a note behind, Maniticel Paris, Juan Crisostomo Ibarra, which means the future is predetermined and generally implies that a bad event will occur. Initially thinking that it was simply a bad joke, Father Salvi recognized the handwriting and confirms that it was indeed Ibarra's. As people began to panic, the lamp flickers. Father Irene tries to turn the wick up when Isagani, due to his undying love for Paulita, bursts in the room and throws the lamp into the river, sabotaging Simon's plan. He escapes by diving into the river as guards chase after him. Isagani later regrets his action because he had contradicted his own belief that he loved his nation more than Paulita and that the explosion and revolution could have fulfilled his ideals for Filipino society. Simon, now unmasked as the perpetrator of the attempted arson and failed revolution, becomes a fugitive. And exhausted after he was shot by the pursuing Guardia Civil, he seeks shelter at the home of Father Florentino, Isagani's uncle, and comes under the care of Dr. Tiburcio de Espadanya, Doña Victorina's husband, who was also hiding at the house. Simon takes poison in order for him not to be captured alive. Before he dies, he reveals his real identity to Florentino while they exchange thoughts about the failure of his revolution and why God forsook him. Florentino opens that God did not forsake him and that his plans were not for the greater of good but for the personal gain. Simon, finally accepting Florentino's explanation, squeezes his hand and then dies. He consoles the dying man saying, "God will forgive you, Senor Simon. He knows that we are fallible. He has seen that you have suffered and ordaining that the chastisement for your faults should come as death from the variance you have instigated to crime. We can see His infinite mercy. He has frustrated your plans one by one, the best conceived, first by the death of Maria Clara, then by a lack of preparation, then in some mysterious way. Let us bow to His will and render Him thanks, seeing Simon die in peace with his conscience and live in peace with God." Father Florentino knelt on the ground and prayed for the death of jeweler. Florentino then takes Simon's remaining jewels and throws them into the Pacific Oceans with the corals, hoping that they would not be used by the greedy, and that when the time came that it would be used for the greater of good, when the nation would be finally deserving liberty for themselves, the sea would reveal the treasure. Simon, also known as Crisostomo Ibarra, he became rich because of his hidden wealth. After years, he came back to the Philippines because of his secret revenge on the Spanish officials. He wants to rescue his lover, Maria Clara, and launch a revolution against Spain. He was called the Brown Cardinal or a Black Eminence because of his great influence in Malacanang. Throughout El Filibusterismo, Simon shows again and again that he is able to use people to his advantage, often without them noticing that he does not actually care about them. He manages to convince several people such as Basilio, Cabisang Tales, Capitan General, Chinaman Quiroga, and Placido Penitente to help with his revolution even when they are not aware that they are doing so. Simon's style is to do favors for people so that they will feel like doing what he asks to repay their debts to him. Simon freeing Basilio from prison is also what leads Basilio to join him. It is mentioned that Simon even convinced the Tulisanes to join his revolution. Basilio is the son of Sisa and Pedro, and the older brother of Crispin. He is the only remaining member of his family due to the turn of events 13 years ago. In the start of El Filibusterismo, he is a student of medicine. He was able to have his education with the help of Capitan Tiago. Later on, he learned that the man is Crisostomo Ibarra, now in disguise as the wealthy jeweler Simon. He is the main love interest of Juli. Basilio joined Simon's rebellion after realizing that Simon is right and revenge is his priority to let Spain pay him with all he has lost fairly. Basilio is highly intelligent and observant. In chapter 7, he manages to figure out Simon's identity. Immediately, despite only having seen Ibarra once 13 years ago, he argues against Simon's claim that he needs to get revenge. After being imprisoned, however, Basilio's mind is said to be weakened, and it is for the reason that he agrees with everything Simon says instead of arguing with his flawed logic. Isagani. Isagani grew up an orphan. His parents are not mentioned as he was adopted as a child by his uncle Padre Florentino. Their precise family relationship remains unclear. There are rumors that Isagani is the son of Padre Florentino's first love or a son of Padre Florentino's cousin. Isagani was one of the members of the student organization attempting to establish the Castilian Academy. The adopted nephew of Padre Florentino, he joined the other students in their efforts to establish the academy, becoming entangled with the group affairs alongside his close friend Basilio. Isagani is the symbol of the youth whose love for the country is great to the point of being branded as idealistic. Ang Tales, he was the son of the woodcutter Tandang Selo, a simple farmer who cared first and foremost about providing for his family. His idealism and trust in the system lead him to become cabeza de barangay to help the town, and is shown to be very skilled in battling with various weapons, as he is able to wield shotguns, bolos, axes. Because of his shooting abilities, as a terrorist he becomes known as Matanglawin or Hawkeye. Also manages to get bandits to help him attack various towns and is able to assassinate several officials throughout Luzon, gaining a fearsome reputation. Paulita Gomez. Paulita Gomez is a lovely and charming orphan who is well aware that every male at the university. Adopted by Don Tiburcio and Aunt Doña Victorina, she had a privileged life and was used to having maids and slaves because her family was always quite affluent. She is considered to be well educated. Paulita Gomez is the complete opposite of the pure and faithful female protagonist of the story, Huli. Despite her preference for the serious Isagani, she married the rich Juanito Pilaes. Her decision to marry the boy is heavily influenced by her aunt, as he is of Spanish descent, and the fact that Isagani had been imprisoned due to allegations of rebellion. Although she is drawn to the arts, she is a pragmatic in her plans for the future. She enjoys socializing and going parties and dances. Paulita Gomez was introduced in the novel Chapter 12, where she charms the crowd again with her beauty. In Chapter 24, Isagani and Paulita's relationship becomes evident as they tell each other's plan. It becomes expected in Chapter 32 that she will marry Juanito, as they complement each other well.
There is Macaray. Macaray is the leader and is also known as a wealthy young man with his own coach, driver, and set of horses. So he definitely owns several houses, but at some point he joined the Students Association and decided to help start a petition to establish an academy for Spanish. He's also one of Isagani's classmates at the University of Santo Tomas. After the outlawing of the group, he was the first to post bail, and he then left the country. Not much is known in Macaray's family or past other than the fact that he came from a wealthy family. So as he is born rich, it is also evident and apparent in his behavior, as he is described as graceful countenance and fine manners, and is said to be an elegant one. It is also apparent that even priests are aware of Macaray's fortune, as Padre Irene, one of the characters of El Filibusterismo, call him or defend him as a charming and rich man. Next is Doña Victorina. Doña Victorina is an ambitious Filipina. She symbolizes those who have distorted their identity. Doña Victorina was a wealthy Filipina with an unknown source of living. She lived in Manila and was often seen with her niece, Paulita Gomez. She was the wife of Don Tiburcio de Espidania 15 years before the events of El Filibusterismo. Then after getting married, people get confused of her race because she aspired to make herself European by putting on makeup, and she managed to be one. Her marriage life was never been a happy one. There was even a time when Don Tiburcio hit her with a crutch and immediately leave the house. Doña Victorina, on the other hand, had been searching for his husband, or for her nowhere to be found husband, ever since that incident happened. The next character would be Juanito Pilaes. Juanito Pelaez was born Indio with mestizo blood and married by Paulita Gomez. He was also the class clown of University of Santo Tomas and referred to as Barbero or favorite of the professors. His joking nature and friendly attitude toward everyone. He is said to be crafty and ill-mannered as could be, as it's seen in chapter 12 of the novel, and loves to prank people. Despite being teased often by his friends and teachers, Juanito Pelaez does not appear to mind and will even make fun of himself. He also doesn't mind insulting himself and calling himself stupid. It is for the reason that many of the older characters, especially his professors, find Juanito Pelaez to be very likable, as well as in every scene wherein Isagani and Paulita Gomez interact, Juanito Pelaez is presented or mentioned. Next is Father Florentino. Father Florentino is described in the novel as an old man with gray hair. He is a quiet man, and he prefers not to mingle with other people not because of arrogance. The priest is in his best health, but he exudes a sad melancholic air. He is different from other priests of his time because he refused to lead a parish but instead lives in an estate he inherited from his parents. He thinks that it is better that way to keep himself away from the public, especially after the hanging of the three secular priests at the Gumburza. And he was from a rich and influential family in Manila. He adopted his nephew Isagani, and it was in Padre Florentino's home that Simon sought shelter after being wounded. So when Simon died, the priest took his remaining jewels, threw them all to the sea, and prayed that whoever finds them will use them for the greater good and not to fund corruption and abuse that can spark a revolution. Padre Florentino represented the secular Filipino priests in Rizal's time. It was also through his character that the author stressed his disapproval of a bloody revolt. He makes his first appearance through in El Filibusterismo, making his character the important portion of hope and peace. Next is Father Sibila. He is the Vice Rector of the University of Santo Tomas, and as a Vice Rector of UST, Padre Sibila is extremely religious and conservative. Most of his decisions are influenced by his loyalty to the school, and because of this, his choices conflict with the students and with priests of different orders. He looks down on almost everyone and often complains about his tenants, the students, and other Indios. He is resentful of the Jesuits and views Dominicans as superior to them. He symbolizes the liberal friar but would rather slay in the background rather than incur the wrath of other priests and power. He is also aware of the injustices done to the natives but would rather not do anything to change it, as all he cares about is getting his congregation in power. So in chapter 9, Padre Sibila is said to talk to more senior but sickly Dominican superior. They talked about how Ibarra and Padre Damaso clashed as well of how the former will benefit their order once he marries Maria Clara. The priest is coldly received by the Captain General along with the other local priests because of Padre Damaso. Next character would be Father Salve. So Father Salve or Padre Bernardo Salve is the Franciscan friar who was the curate of San Diego. He was also described as wistful and said to be very strict in fulfilling his duties and will not do anything that will dishonor his reputation. He is the kind of priest who would close the church doors during his sermons, and he rarely resorts to physical punishments as he imposes fines on his erring subordinates. Padre Salve is said to be the rival of Alferez. He is said to be a hypocrite and a miser. He was the curate who had punished Crispin severely for the missing gold in the collection box, and he schemes and did quite a job at blackmailing Maria Clara regarding her paternity. Padre Salve enters the novel in chapter 5 where he stares at the beauty of Maria Clara breathlessly, and in chapter 13, Ibarra confronted Padre Salve about what happened to his father's corpse, to which the latter denied having any participation of. However, this has ignited the priest's animosity towards Ibarra. By chapter 40, the priest's yearnings for Maria Clara became more obvious. He forced Maria Clara to surrender Ibarra's letters in exchange for Doña Pia's letters revealing the real father of Maria. When the latter became a nun of the convent of Santa Clara, he managed to satisfy the lust he had for her when he managed to become one of the priests who holds Mass there. Next, Padre Irene or Father Irene. He is described as Captain Tiago's advisor and a great friend. He shares information with other people, and a lot of information he shares turns out to be false. He lies a lot, and his statements often contradict each other depending on who is talking to. He is usually calm and smiling during that most situation. Padre Erin is first introduced by riding on sternship Tabu together with other priests. He is quiet when Tabu gets stuck in the mud, while the group argues over how to prevent it from happening again. Basilio mentions Padre Irene to Isagani and Captain Basilio, complaining that he suggested to Captain Tiago to send Basilio to San Diego so that Captain Tiago could smoke opium. Isagani explains that they gave Padre Irene 2 chestnut horses to get him to convince Capitan General to approve the petition for the Academy for Spanish. He is an old Filipino lawyer who refuses to help the Filipino students in their clamor for educational reforms. But he is a kind friar who is a friend of the Filipino students. He supports the students who appeal to the government for an Academy of Spanish language. Lastly, the last character, Father Fernandez. Father Fernandez is an Indio and a Dominican professor at University of Santo Tomas, and his favorite student is Isagani, the priest friend of Isagani, and he promised to him that he and the other priests will give in to the student's demands. So Father Fernandez has a liberal stance as a parish priest and a well-known exceptional parish model of good behavior. He took a stand and was against with the corrupt work of the leaders and his fellow friars. He explains that it is better to teach people fairness instead of ignorance, and he said that the Indio idolizes justice and therefore what they desire is fair and should be granted. He spends most of El Filibusterismo sharing information with others. So when deciding whether to approve the petition for the Academy for Spanish, Father Fernandez is one of those who supports it. The secretary mentions that the head of the petition, which were the Isagani, Macarig, and Basilio, have been accused of radicalism, but Father Fernandez defends Isagani. He comments that Dominicans should be like the Jesuits, but Padre Sibilla reacts badly to this. He is considered different from all the priests because he is polite, welcoming to everyone, and willing to listen to other people's points of view. Because of that, he is respected even by his fellow priests. He is often calm and collected, even during an argument, and does not angry even when the person he is talking to says something offensive.
El Filibusterismo aims to enlighten the society and to bring the Filipinos closer to the truth. In this novel, the society is urged to open its eyes to the reality and rebel against the Spanish government for its oppression and abuse. The novel helped awaken the Filipinos to fight for their freedom and stand with their right. It had made Filipino realize that war does not necessarily have to end through the means of violence. It could always be ended peacefully, through words and maybe even forgiveness. Words are far stronger than any guns. Vengeance is not ours, it's God. Evilness is at every corner, but thou shalt not fear, because good will always prevail.